So I've got about 30 minutes before I have to go pick up brown milk, and I've been missing y'all, so let's go chat.
We about to go outside. I don't think you're walking around really faster, buddy.
So yesterday I was out at a tea shop with my friend, and my husband called me and said, hey, the neighbor lady has a dog at her door. And I'm thinking, what? How? Turns out that Kion actually has learned to open our front door. And so when I go places without him, apparently he is so upset that he decides I'm gonna let myself out and go find mom. That was how yesterday started for me.
She looks so quiet and sleepy. I've been bringing our compost out and throwing them into our garden beds because thanks to our dogs, I can't actually have open compost bins outside without them getting into them.
And so that's a big reason why I took on worm farming, so that we can try to close the gap of food scraps in our kitchen by feeding them to worms, which will then feed our garden with their poop. But in the meantime, I've been taking like our coffee beans, the filters, banana peels, eggshells, stuff that I just have in excess to what I've been feeding our worms, and throwing them into the garden beds. However, get down. Prime example. It's been very difficult to keep the dogs out of it, but thankfully it's food that like they're not like going to town on, like they're just being mischievous.
Go on now. Trust me, you don't want to eat coffee. It's not good for you.
Or maybe it is. I have no idea. So you might be wondering why our low tunnel looks like this, and it's because nothing's actually currently growing in our low tunnel. It's the end of January, and in zone 5, it is just too cold really for that matter to grow anything in a low tunnel of this matter. I do have little pockets of water that has frozen that I just haven't tended to, and since today's supposed to be a high of 51 degrees, which is very unusual in our zone, I thought once it thaws out, I'm gonna get that water taken off and just take this tarp off until I decide to plant some greens in here, which I won't do probably until April or early May to give them a head start. But you know, items like spinach, arugula, radishes, all of those are safe to start before your last frost. Obviously, just don't want to start them outside in the peak of winter when your soil is frozen, like right now. But on that note, welcome back to my garden. She is quiet, cold, dreary, and sleepy. There's a lot of noise in January in the gardening world because January really does mark the beginning of the gardening season, especially if you're a seed starter. I often find myself online scrolling social media and watching YouTube videos of people already starting their seeds, and every part of me wants to jump into it right away. If you're seeing this, let this be a reminder that your zone is very specific to your zone. We are in zone 5, so those people starting in zone 7 and 8, that's the perfect time for them. And I just feel like it's almost like a FOMO, like fear of missing out. It's that similar feeling of like, oh no, have I waited too long to start my seeds? Am I not gonna have enough time for them to grow indoors? You know, just, I feel like this fear comes over me of, I don't wanna miss out. And so I'm trying to be really intentional this year of just stay focused on your garden, what thrives in your garden, what you love in your garden, what brings you joy in your garden, and to stop comparing my little garden right here in suburbia to those gardens that are out on acreages in Tennessee. I think that's important. I don't feel like there's enough people talking about, well, what makes you happy in your garden? What makes you want to be a gardener? And it makes me reflect on the fact that I started gardening because, well, my mother wanted a garden, but she was not very good at it. And so as a young girl, I took it on, and I found joy in it. And I remember my dog, I had a little black miniature schnauzer named Jock, and he was my childhood dog, and he would go outside with me and we'd walk down to the garden, and I have this photo, I'll put it in here, but he's just sitting in a sweet potato patch. And I remember in that moment, it was just so quiet. It was like the world stopped turning and it was just him and I in the garden. And I want to recreate that this year. I want to recreate just a garden that I love, that thrives, that feeds my family, that is food for people in the community, for people at church that, you know, can't grow a garden or don't have a means to. And I just want to create an atmosphere just like I do for my home. I want it to be welcoming, warming, and a place where people can come and feel safe and feel poured into. And I think that's okay to say. In order for that to happen, I have to address the feelings of missing out, of feeling like I'm running short of what I need or of what I want, when in all reality, this garden, what you see right here, it's gonna be what I make it. It's gonna be what I decide to grow. It's gonna be what weeds I decide to let grow and what weeds I decide to snuff out. It's slow and it's steady. It's consistent and it's resilient. And I love that. I love that about the garden. So I know that I've shared with you guys in the last couple of videos how I want to expand in our herbs, but I also want to be very intentional in creating a tea garden this year. And a big part of that is I have just found so much joy in the diversity that teas bring into our bodies and our home and our health. And unfortunately, a lot of teas, just like any other food in our food system, can be sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. They can be grown in soil that has been exposed to glyphosate, and you know, the list goes on. And so teas is one thing that I really want to start venturing into. And if you've been around, you know, if this isn't your first video, you've probably seen that or heard that from me before. But that's the thing with this garden, is I want to make it what I want it to be. I want it to feed my soul like it used to as a little girl, when I really didn't have any cares in the world. I had parents that took care of me, that paid for the house that was over my head, and that drove me to school. Like, I just gardened because, yes, my mom wanted a garden, but I wanted a garden. I enjoyed it. And so I want to recreate that. I want a garden that I'm thriving in. And that doesn't go to say that I'm not gonna grow things that I can store. I mean, obviously I'm gonna be doing that. I'm doing my Jersey Devil tomatoes. I'm gonna do some more potatoes this year. And there's other areas in this garden, as you can see. We haven't even finished it. We haven't laid any of the chips. We just have cardboard and tarp, and it looks a mess. And that's because gardening is slow and it's steady. It's slow and it's steady. It's not meant to be beautiful and perfect and pretty. And if that's you, if you find yourself in a place where your garden is that way, congratulations. Like, you've made it, I guess. But it's not the reality. The reality is that we should all be growing something that brings us joy, not just something that fills the pantry shelves. And I think it's healthy to have both of those things. And if this is what it takes to remind you, then that this is why I record these things. Because if you're listening to this and that hits home with you, let this sink into your soul, that your garden this year can be something that you enjoy. If you garden simply because you feel the pressure of the fear of our food system, or just the pressure of the world in general, I mean, I'm glad you're growing a garden, but let me tell you, there's so much more. There's so much more to be explored in your garden. There's different seeds to be grown. There's different types of plants and species and varieties that you can grow that will bring you joy, that will attract you just like a pollinator into the garden. I don't know. You could say I'm feeling a bit optimistic about gardening this year, despite not having a complete garden, despite, you know, it looking the way that it does. Gardening is slow and steady. That seems to be the reoccurring theme of this video, that your garden should be slow and steady. Yes, love. Well, guys, I have got to go help Silas put on his cowboy boots so that we can play outside before we go pick up our milk. You ready to go pick up our milk? Yeah. Yeah? I'm going to sign off here and leave you guys at that. Allow your garden to be slow and steady, and let it be a place that you feel attracted to. I'll see you guys later. Bye.